Lewis, the idea of free will is one of the core ideas for many people. It's a core idea because it gives them a sense of self and determination and power. And yet, in the work of Spinoza, free will is pretty emphatically denied. What's your ideas around that?
Good question, Martin. What is free will? And do we have free will? What does Spinoza say? Spinoza calls free will an illusion, that we're aware of our desires. Sure enough, I want this, I want that, I want a boyfriend, I want a girlfriend, I want a job, I want a career, I want money, I want a car, I want a Corvette. I want to go to that fancy restaurant, or I want a burger. We all have desire. Spinoza also calls man, or say desire, is the essence of man. So man has desires. We are aware of our desire, what I want. And we can imagine the effects of this desire, because we're always wanting pleasure. So we feel that desire is free, because after all, we are experiencing it. I have this desire. I'm thirsty. So I'm going to go get a beer or a drink of water or whatever. So we're aware of these sensory feelings that expresses our nature, our body. But Spinoza says is what caused that desire in the first place. What I'm learning, and what I understand, that there's a law of necessity. This is what Spinoza talks about, the law of necessity. What does that mean? He says that everything follows from the laws of necessity, which is that everything endeavors to persist in its existence. Now, this may be difficult to understand because we're so used to following what is familiar in our language. But the language of Spinoza, he says that freedom is in the understanding. It's interesting that you learn how to walk as a child because you necessarily see other people walking, and you eventually are influenced, your parents or your guardian, whoever is raising you, see you at say 4 or 5 months old. They started holding you, standing you up, and they want you to start walking because that's a natural procedure, or say development of a child. If you were raised among, say, apes or animals, say wolves, I'm sure the stories are true, but say if you were, you would follow the pack of wolves and be on your four legs, on your hands and your knees or leg, or you would be horizontal rather than upright. We learn how to walk, we learn how to talk, and now we learn about eating. I grew up in an environment of, say, Hispanic, Mexican American. I'm a Mexican American living in the U.S. My parents are from Mexico. I love Mexican food. I desire to go to a Mexican restaurant. I desire specific foods, and they must have similarity to my mother's. So where is the free will in that? It's all called conditioning.
Yeah, just like a chain of cause and effect.
Okay, very good.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think Einstein said we can do what we want, but we can't want what we want. In other words, we react to our desires, but we can't we can't desire what we desire. We desire whatever we desire, full stop, and then we react to it.
Yes.
So, yeah, but the thing is that I know that many people find that very, very hard to accept, that they are effectively like little automatons, running along in life, driven by this chain of cause and effect. How does somebody deal with an idea like that?
Well, Spinoza gives us a plan of how to strengthen our mind. He has a method of strengthening our mind, and it's called the understanding. Well, that takes work. And most people do not want to work to increase their understanding. So I want to mention another gentleman. His name is Gurdjieff. Now, I work with Gurdjieff and Spinoza, mostly Spinoza, because he has a method of how to, strengthen ourselves to understand our nature. And in the understanding of our nature, that is where our real power is. Most people think that their free will is their power.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that an individual in prison today is there because he has a desire. What is that desire? You might say he might be a desire for money, so he might rob someone, or he might have he might be there for injuring another someone. Could be a friend. Remember reading a news report where this young man is in prison. Why? Because he killed his friend. What did he do? Well, his friend started laughing and criticizing him for the way he was driving. Just because he was driving and he was being laughed at, he decides to shoot his friend. There was another young man who was a rising star for the football team called the Patriots. Championship team. I think they last won the football championship this last year. His last name is Hernandez. He's in prison right now. And he's accused of murdering several people. But he definitely was in charge for murdering 2 individuals. Why? Because they spilled his drink. He was at a bar, being with friends, and this is a very large man. He weighs about 240, 250, over 6'3", big man. And I was wondering, why would he do such a thing? It all goes back down to power, Martin. Power is man's nature, and desire follows power. Or in each desire, there's a desire for power. The power to exist and persist in nature, to live. We just don't want to live. We want to live well. The American dream, or the English dream, the dream of being wealthy, driving a nice car, going into a nice restaurant, marrying, having children. It all looks like a beautiful story. But most people's lives are living with a desperation. In the U.S., and probably other parts of the world, over 50% of the people get divorced. They have this wild dream. We all do. I'm divorced. We all have this wild desire, and we believe our desires are free, not realizing that I have an attitude, a belief, what a beautiful woman is. Not out of free will, but how I, developed as a child.
Yeah.
I saw these images, and I thought that would be a good, pretty a woman. She must have a certain shape, a certain color. She must have a certain education. But I was attracted to this woman because I felt, and this is where Spinoza comes in. Spinoza helps us understand our nature. And when we begin to look at our nature, and there must be someone that has gone through the process like yourself, like I've been through this before for 45 years when I met my teacher. I realized that I had everything that everybody a young man would want: marriage, a business, a career, money, and it wasn't enough because I felt something missing. And what was missing was an intelligence that I thought I never had. I saw the intelligence of my siblings. I thought intelligence was just being smart, having good grades. I did poorly in school. I dropped out. I met my teacher, and he talked about consciousness, the idea that we are not a master of ourselves. To be a master of ourselves, we must know our emotions, our desires. Martin, this work that we're doing is truly freedom. Not because we have free will, because we understand we do not have free will.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you talk, it sounds like by the time Gurdjieff used to say that by the time people are 30 years old, they're effectively dead. Because they're fully conditioned, and the rest of their life will just play out as a pianola, one of these pianos that plays themselves. But it sounds like what you're saying is that by the time we get to a certain age, what we desire and what we consider to be valuable is largely programming. And there's the programming. There's also the natural desire to want to exist and to assume power. But the way people assume power is then conditioned by their ideas. So we get a whole pile of programming, and then we say, yeah, I want a Mercedes car. And actually, if you go to another part of the world where people are still, running around in, half naked and haven't got a developed society, for them, having power means that they've got two kinds of spear instead of just one. And this whole thing of how people manifest their power, it just sounds like it's wholly conditioned by the environment in which you grow up. And, there's no free will there either.
Very difficult to accept the idea that we do not have free will,
Yeah.
Martin. Because, go back to the idea we're aware of our desires, our feelings of what we want. I'm attracted to someone. A young teenager, feeling of invincibility of young people. It's wonderful. I'm glad we have it because it continues the race. Procreation is a built-in mechanism. We don't have free will to decide I want to have sex. No, the sex hormones, testosterone in males and women, there's other hormones that trigger the desire to have intercourse.
Yeah, it's overwhelming, isn't it? Yeah.
It's so overwhelming. It's all an animal species.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing that's there because otherwise, if we have free choice, we would say, I don't want to have children because they're too much work.
Yeah.
But we desire children because we have other children, and we believe we desire a family because that's supposed to be the greatest good, other than having also money. But you must have some money to be able to raise a child. So the illusion of free will is necessary.
Yeah.
Otherwise, mankind would not be motivated. They're under the motivation by this illusion. It's a wonderful thing. Freud saw how man, the emotions of man, and emotion, he says, desire. If you stimulate in man the proper desire or stimulation images, that individual will be gravitate towards those images that you produce. So Freud's brother, who was in marketing, advertising.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He began to see the reality and the value of desire and influence. So now, today, they don't advertise a car, the mechanical values of it, but they put you a family with the car. They put pleasure and all these images, travel. And right now, I'll see one individual with a car called an SUV, uh, which is a big vehicle, a gas-consuming vehicle in this country, U.S. And why? Because they have this idea of safety.
Mm.
But yet they don't realize that they've been influenced by these images about largeness, safety, protect your family, you can take loads of people, yet they have no choice. They have a choice. Correction. They have a choice, Martin. They have several choices, but they're not free.
No. I mean, right,
Yeah,
this
go ahead.
reminds me. I mean, we're going to have to wind up in a minute, but this reminds me of the assertion that Gurdjieff said, we cannot help but be under influences, but we do have some freedom to decide which influences we're under.
Yes.
And for most people, they don't really even make choices to which influences they're under. They just fall into the default ones, which is consumerism, family, whatever it is, religion. But, as you say, the freedom comes from understanding. But there again, I suppose there are influences on understanding. But I think that's probably going to be a long discussion, Lewis. So we probably ought to
Yes.
wind
Well,
up.
let's see.
Yeah.
What is understanding?
Yeah.
Another time, Martin.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Lewis.
Thank you, Martin.